Rebecca Moore, and this is Art Watch Radio on WCAG 1520 every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30. So happy you could join us. Today, my guest is the owner of Somerville Manning Gallery, Vickie Manning. The exhibition Past, Present, Future is an exhibition celebrating 40 years in business, and it's on view through October 16th at the gallery's new temporary location in Somerville. The show explores new work by an exciting selection of artists in honor of the long-standing relationships the gallery holds with clients and artists. Hi, Vickie.
Hi, Becca.
So I know it's kind of a broad question, but how does it feel to be celebrating 40 years?
I don't know where it went. I really don't know where it went, but I still feel very engaged and excited by that. And I think that when we last year all of us went, oh my God, it's been 40 years. We need to celebrate that. Mm-hmm. And that's when you and I started brainstorming about how does one acknowledge and celebrate 40 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, exactly. And I guess we're celebrating a little differently than we initially anticipated. Some people may not realize that our gallery space in Breck's Mill, the gallery space is fine, but the mill itself was hit pretty hard by Hurricane Ida. And instead of, installing this brand new beautiful show in that space, we scrambled and were able to find a temporary location. So when we were planning this show, we wanted a little mystery involved. Can you explain a little bit about what the actual vision was for the 40th anniversary exhibition?
We wanted a surprise and drama, not expecting this. Be careful what you wish for. And so our concept was, how do we acknowledge and appreciate 40 years of people that helped make the gallery, as well as where we're going with it. So the idea was to ask artists. I didn't want just a ordinary group show gallery collection. I find that boring. So to make it more exciting, we asked artists to, first of all, either paint something for us, or in the case of an NC or Andrew Wyatt, a painting that no one has seen before. We didn't want it. It could be exhibited in a museum, but we didn't want it exhibited in another gallery. We didn't want it shown somewhere else. It didn't have to be brand new, but it had to be new to the public, was the idea. And then we also did not do a catalog with printed images. We purposely did no advanced publications on it. We wanted it to be a surprise. We wanted people the people in the area could either come here and see it, or once we got the online catalog out, which we were coinciding to the beginning of the show, then people across the country could also see the opportunities of what were in the show. That was the plan. And we essentially asked artists that had been with us for a long time, people that were more current, and then we also invited a few young artists that we have shown that have tremendous promise. Mm-hmm. And we also decided for criteria that they were all artists that had had a one-person show with us. Mm-hmm. In terms of our commitment. And that's how we came with the show, paintings and sculpture. Mm.
And some of the artists have been with the gallery almost since the beginning.
Right.
I mean, there's some, I'm thinking Greg Mort, John Redmond. I mean, they've been Peter Sculthorpe for almost 30, 35 years at this point, which is really unique for a gallery and artist relationship. Why do you think that you've been able to kind of help mold the careers of these artists, but then also continue to advocate them for so long? You must believe in what they're doing.
I believe in what they're doing. I've been successful selling their work, which is a big reason people stay with me, to be perfectly candid. and I think everyone trusts me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've made a point of trying to be honest and genuine, and I think I'm passionate, mm-hmm. and I think all those characteristics follow through. And I have to admit, I work really hard at it, mm-hmm. and I think that the artists appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, and another really great aspect of the gallery's history, and speaking of someone who has worked at the gallery for 10 years, I've always felt it was really empowering that it's been a solely female-run and employed business for those 40 years. Now, it's something that is greatly celebrated today, but have you experienced any particular challenges along the way because of that, or you're kind of just in your lane doing what you're doing and staying focused?
Yes, all the above. It's definitely been a girls' club, and that's been fun. Also, wonderful support because of that, support group because of that. Challenges as being a woman in business, absolutely. I mean, 40 years in business, it's not a secret then probably how old I am in some form. And so I did come out of sort of the late 60s and 70s, which was the beginning of women empowerment, women being allowed to really go and do what they wanted to do. A lot of my friends were some of the early lawyers or, any other kind of careers. And I think that's had its own set of challenges. I mean, women have been in the art gallery world in the past, Betty Parsons and it doesn't matter, other names. But so that's not new. But I definitely have learned or experienced, I should say, the pat on the head, sweetheart, honey. I can't think of a kind way of resolving, of commenting on that, how I feel about some other things. Not sexual harassment. I won't say it's not that. It's more, it's condescending. It's just and also because of that, the condescending attitude, the sense that particularly, I don't know how to say this kindly either, but I would say particularly, probably men thought that they could, push around, push for better prices, push me around. And so, yeah, sure. Of course.
Yeah. Well, you obviously have such a good, head for business, and I know that you learned that from your dad, so I feel like you would not let them push you around in cases like that. No.
I don't know how I got raised that way. It was sort of before the time of that, but somehow my dad did raise me like that, so I did. And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that
I just want to comment on that. That was kind of funny. I mean, I thank him for that, and yet my dad was colorblind, and art to him, he used to be so amazed. He thought it was like, you sell air. It was so disconnected to this history, but somehow I was.
So you got the business mind from him, but definitely not the art mind.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Something else that I think really makes the gallery stand out, and it's really unique among small city galleries, which, we're in Wilmington, we're considered that, but the gallery does present museum-quality works and offers personalized support in all aspects of art collecting, whether that's placing works in major private collections as well as leading public collections. Did you open the gallery with that particular trajectory in mind?
Definitely. I never wanted to be a local gallery. It just wasn't. I didn't want to be a frame shop local gallery, which back when I started in 1981 was really all that existed in this region. Philadelphia, Main Line, there were real galleries there. And I had come from there. I had actually ran a gallery in Bryn Mawr for 4 years before I came here. But when I moved to this area, everybody was like, oh, that'll never work down there. Nobody will ever buy anything of consequence. Everybody's a frame shop. And I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do. And so I didn't. And I just kind of believed in it and promoted the artists and did things like did a lot of risk-taking shows that did just trying it out. I mean, back in the day, we even did art furniture and
like crafts.
Crafts, yeah, but more, I would say the furniture.
Yeah.
We had a few crafts, but then we did outsider art, and then that became huge. I didn't stick with it, but we did it. But we used to do a lot of experimental, exciting shows. We were a gallery in a small city where, we really kind of had the whole, we could do anything we wanted. We didn't, because everything was different. And
it's like you didn't have the same sort of pressures as being in New York or something like that.
Right, like it wasn't like, oh, the gallery down the street's doing that, so you don't want to do that. So we really had a blank slate, and then I really wanted it to be, as I said, national. So in those days, we were advertising in Architectural Digest, and picking the magazines being the form of publicity
at the time,
and trying to get our artists' images nationally seen. And then that changed as the digital age came in. So now what happens is we go to art fairs, which we always did from the very beginning.
Across country now,
yeah. Where we do the Seattle show, we do a Philadelphia show, we've done New York. We get out there and work the fairs and show our artists, and we also work with a lot of museums, which is really fun and exciting. I'm very pleased to be able to do that. And then we also belong to a lot of national, international art sites that are digital that are for galleries. And that in itself has gotten, I always like to say, it's very exciting. We shipped sculpture to Australia. We have shipped paintings to
Paris. Malaysia, right? You remember that one?
Yeah, Malaysia. We shipped a John Redmond to Malaysia.
Yeah.
We've shipped to, recently we shipped a really major painting to Italy.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that adds a lot of, as well as all over the country, but I think that really adds a lot of excitement for us.
Exactly. And we will talk more about kind of the evolution of the gallery over 40 years, but right now we do have to take a break, but we'll be right back with Vickie Manning. Welcome back to Art Watch Radio, WCHE AM Radio 1520. This is Rebecca Moore, Director of Somerville Manning Gallery, and today my guest is Vickie Manning, owner of Somerville Manning Gallery, whose 40th anniversary exhibition is on view now through October 16th at our temporary location at 5714 Kennett Pike in Centerville, Delaware. So, Vickie, before the break, we were talking a little bit about how even in print advertising and just how we've reached out to new clients and things like that over the years has changed, going from magazines to internet. What are some other ways, do you think, that we've evolved? I mean, really, the gallery has lived many different lives through the dot-com boom, through the recession, through a pandemic. I mean, there's been a lot of things along the sidelines of running this business.
Yeah, we've had to reinvent all the time. Numerous recessions. I feel like that's, oh yeah, here we go again.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, there was the real boom in Wilmington when MB&A was growing at tremendous proportions, and MB&A, all the banks, everything. So they were huge collectors,
So you did a lot of corporate collections back then?
Well, it was corporate, but a lot of the executives were buying privately, and so and really were willing to expand and do big art collections. So that was very exciting, and then that ended, and then you go on to the next the next idea, and one of them was in 2008, when probably even today, the worst recession we went through was the 2008.
Yeah.
That was really bad for several years. My retired partner, Sadie, and I went through a couple of years where we literally took nothing out of it to sustain it, because
paycheck-wise,
money-wise, yeah. It was just a really tough time, and we had to cut back but I think the fact that we had already been in existence for a while, and we owned inventory, and we were able to sustain when many galleries went out at that time. And then we were coming up with new ideas, and that was when we started the American Master Show, which was derived because one day I thought about, I'd been going to the art auctions in New York, Christie's and Sotheby's, and American Art Week for 25 years or whatever. And thought, wow, I have all this knowledge of watching the markets and the paintings by American artists, and I'm not doing anything about that down at the gallery. So we came up with the show called American Masters. It was very ambitious at the time, which the director at the Delaware Art Museum, I remember saying that to me. And we literally...
Don't you know that ambitious is what we do?
Right. And, you know, we had works in by... actually, I should also say the context of the show was we've always shown the Wyeth family, and we've been specialists in N.C. Wyeth, Andrew and Jamie for all these years, and also all the women. We did the Wyeth Women Show for the daughters of N.C. So we did this show that was here are the artists in America that were painting at the same time of these three generations of Wyeth. So one could compare and understand and learn from what else was going on in the art world at that time. And we started with a realism base with major works by
John Singer Sargent,
Robert Henry,
who else?
Homer.
Yeah.
You know, all names in American history. And we did that for several years, and then we added to the abstract expressionist, you know, the sort of postmodern 1950s work, where I didn't do that to begin with because the gallery's been a primarily realism-based or representational-based gallery, and we added that and brought in Hans Hofmann and Helen Frankenthaler and Motherwell and lots of other really important.
One of my favorite things to see is, like, an Andrew Wyeth with a Hans Hofmann, right? So they were both painting around the same time. And it just goes to show that Andy really stuck to the realism route while the rest, so much of the art world was going into full abstract expressionist. And I always thought that parallel was really interesting.
And I also, when I say realism, I think Bo Bartlett said once, and I appreciate it, he says it's not realism, it's representational. Realism is a photograph. But he and Andrew Wyeth and all these other artists, they're not painting like that. They're painting what they want to see. And they leave in, they leave out, they add, they completely, you know, it's representational, but it's their vision, which is really different from just straight realism.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
It's not photographic.
No. And then I think even later on, we've explored moving from the American Masters show. We explored Under the Influence exhibition as well,
that was fun.
Which was kind of it was like the Master show, but we brought in contemporary work as well, and we've done several instances of that as well, where we bring in a handful of contemporary artists and then hang alongside masters who inspired those works. And I mean, we've had everything from Sol LeWitt to, who else?
Sargent.
I don't remember. Sargent, yeah. It's pretty spectacular what we can get our hands on.
Frankenthaler, Glacken. We let them name who they wanted, who inspired them, and then we found the work to hang alongside.
Well, that's what I think is so interesting about the gallery in general, is because, yes, we represent a really amazing roster of established contemporary artists that are not only nationwide, but some international artists as well. But for 40 years, the gallery has offered and exhibited significant work of American art. And then also, like Vickie said, we have so much from the Brandywine tradition, but we've moved towards American modernism, post-war, and contemporary. So, Vickie, those are some really big, ambitious, back to ambition, right?
Yeah.
These ambitious projects. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about some other big projects that we've kind of, like, I know we've worked a lot with different museums over the years. Can you share any stories pertaining to those?
Well, I mean, besides the museums, I was just thinking how, you know, we also survived COVID,
another hurdle.
Another hurdle from the last couple of years. And then out of that, actually, Rebecca and I both read this book, 9th Street Women, which was the evolution of the essentially American abstract expressionist movement that really covered American art from about 1930 up to
60s, kind of?
70s a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was told through the story of 5 women, Joan Mitchell, Helen Frankenthaler,
Grace Hardigan, Lee Krasner.
Oh my God.
Elaine de Kooning, thank you.
So the goal was to have work by them, and then actually we called it 9th Street Women and Their Legacy, so that we could bring in artists. That was really pretty exciting. We got original works by all those 5 women, and then we had a plan that artists who they had to know some of the 9th Street women,
or have some sort of connection to them in some way. Yeah.
And so we got Mary Page Evans, who is regional to this area, one of our artists who was good friends with Joan Mitchell and Grace Hardigan, and also Bill Scott, and we brought in Marie from France, who had been friends with Joan Mitchell. Anyway, it was a very, very exciting exhibit.
Well, on a show like that, I remember everybody coming in and being like, oh, my gosh, I can't believe that no one's thought of this before, or any museum hasn't done that. And I think that really goes to show that, like, not only do we have fun with our shows, we put on exhibitions that we also would want to see.
Right.
And it is interesting sometimes that I don't know, to toot our own horn, we're a little ahead of the curve sometimes. Not ahead of the curve, because obviously the abstract expressionist female market is insanely booming at the moment.
The hottest market.
But to tie it into something greater than just those individual artists' career, I don't know. I thought that was a really great show.
To bring in the legacy. Yeah, that was really fun. I've had a lot of people tell me that panel discussion we did was they've listened to it on the link that we sent out.
Exactly.
Fascinated they were by it.
Yeah. And who knows? I hope a museum ends up doing a really fabulous show like that, because they can get some really spectacular work. But in the meantime, I mean, we've done shows that correlate with major exhibitions with museums. I mean, the Philadelphia Museum of Art during their Andrew Wyeth show.
In 2006, they had one of the last, well, I shouldn't say the last, but they had a really major Andrew Wyeth show.
While he was living.
Yes. And so we did one in the gallery at the same time, which was sanctioned by Andy. And then we also did a show with the Delaware Art Museum of Behind the Easel. It was a book that had been researched and done by Bob Jackson, one of our artists, that essentially was 20 representational artists that he uses a criteria that he would travel to see a show by them. So the museum did it, and we did all those at the same time. What other ones? Oh, we did NC Wyeth at the same time that the Brandywine did their show.
Yeah.
That was just a couple of years ago.
And it's always so fun working with museums, because I feel like anymore they're getting really open to the I don't know, just sharing the fun of it all together, which is really nice.
We did.
Oh, yeah.
He had the tour in 2014. He had a 4-museum tour, and we did an exhibition in the gallery at the same time that the Brandywine had. They had that show.
Yeah. And speaking, also, because you just said Jamie, it reminded me that you've, traveled for a bunch of Jamie's openings and things like that. And it reminds me of that we're doing more and more of these art fairs. And if we could talk for a second about the Seattle Fair and how that's really opened up so many doors. And I think that bringing out the Brandywine kind of school out to Seattle has oddly been really successful. And I think it goes to show that a gallery isn't just its location. And I think that really helps discuss kind of like the broad reach of what we have. Would you agree?
Well, yes, I remember I went with the group at the Brandywine River Museum that went out for the opening of the Andrew Wyeth show at the Seattle Art Museum, which was wonderful to see and be part of. And while I was there, I knew about the Seattle Art Fair that was about, at that time, maybe 2 years old. And I thought, oh, my God, why don't we come out here with a Wyeth, at that time with a Wyeth booth for Seattle? And everybody was like, oh, that's a great idea. It's a great idea when we were in Seattle. So we did. And we did half the booth in the Wyeth family, because there was a real buzz in Seattle for this show, which they had no idea how Seattle was really going to receive this show.
Exactly.
That was like not expected, but the Seattle Art Museum didn't think it was going to go well. I mean, not to the extent it did. Let me put it that way. So I mean, they did 200% better than they expected, So there was a great excitement about it, and then we show up with original paintings at the fair. But we also brought other artists with us too, other contemporary artists.
Bo Bartlett, Francis DeFranzo, Sarah McRae Morton, all of which who are really successful. Bob Jackson, all of which who are very successful and well-known artists on the East Coast, but they surpassed all of our expectations.
Yeah, no one knew them out there, but that did really, really well.
Yeah.
So now we've done that several years.
Exactly. So that's another kind of interesting direction that the gallery is moving into the future. And I hate to say this because I feel like you and I could have a much longer conversation than this, but our time's up. So we have to wrap up, but thanks so much for spending some time with us today. And it was great talking to Vickie. Somerville Manning Gallery's 40th anniversary exhibition is on view now through October 16th at our temporary location at 5714 Kennett Pike in Centerville, Delaware. Thanks for joining us today on Art Watch Radio. This is Rebecca Moore, and make sure to tune in next Wednesday from 1 to 1:30 for a new episode. Take care, everyone.